What's going on, guys? This is going to be part 2 of the OTG trading bot introduction. In this video, I'm going to go over some tips and tricks on some things that I do to kind of increase the strike rate of the signals from the bot. So first off, if you guys have a higher tier account on TradingView, you can put 4 charts on your screen. I think you have to have at least Pro Plus to do this. If you have a lower account where you can only do 2, if you download their desktop, you could open up new tabs. So you could have like 2 charts on one, 2 charts on another. But if you have the Pro Plus and you can do 4, what I like to do is I have multiple time frames on all of the charts. So I'm watching the same ticker, but I'm looking at multiple time frames. Okay. So I like to look at 15-minute, 1 hour, 4 hour, and daily. And basically, if I am looking to trade the signals from the bot, let's say I'm looking to trade the 15 minutes, so I want to get in a short-term scalp, right? I'm going to look at the 1 hour, the 4 hour, and the daily, and I hope those trades or those bots are on my side, right? So if the 1 hour is in a sell, 4 hours in a sell, daily's in a sell, and the 15-minute just went from a buy signal to a sell signal, that would be a pretty good signal that it's going to go lower. Now, looking at it here, it does give you a sell signal. You can't see it because there's one little bug right now with the take profits. But if we go in here and we turn off the take profit, we can see that the sell signal came in on the 15-minute. So if we were looking at this, we could say, okay, the 1 hour was in a sell, the 4 hour was in a sell, the daily was in a sell, right? So if all your other time frames are in sells, you probably want to ignore the buy signals and only take the sell signals, right? We could take those sell signals as a short entry, and then we could use the take profits or whatnot to get out of that trade, right? So look at the other time frames to get confirmation for the time frame that you are trading, right? And you don't have to look at every single time frame, but I do recommend looking at the higher time frames to see what the overall consensus is on what you're trading. You want to know what your overall trend is. If your overall trend is in buy signals or in sell signals. And you typically want to follow those higher time frames, whichever direction they're in, right? Another thing that I like to do is I'm calling it the waterfall effect. So it's when, let's say we're on a 15-minute, and we can use this for reversal trading. So like right now is a good example. Bitcoin has been selling off for quite some time, right? If we look at the daily, we've been selling off for a long time. So if I'm looking to try to knife catch Bitcoin here and to catch a bottom, we're going to start on the lower time frames. So you could start on the 1 minute, you could start on the 5 minute, whatever you want to do, but you need to start on the lower time frame. So let's just say we started on the 1 minute here. So that's like the absolute lowest I would go. So the waterfall effect is when you start reversing on the lower time frames and then you keep going higher and higher on the time frames to get those signals, right? So let's say on the 1 minute, we got a buy signal, all right? But I don't want to take a 1 minute signal. That's just too low of a time frame. I'm looking for a higher time frame. So what am I going to do? We have a 1 minute buy. We're going to go to the 5 minute and we're going to wait for that to come in as a buy, right? So this begins the waterfall effect. It is waterfalling into the other time frames, right? So the 1 minute gives you a buy. Let's say the 5 minute gives us a buy. So now the reversal is starting to actually become a strong reversal, right? So then we go to the 15 minute and so on and so forth. And let's say it finally got to the time frame that I want to trade. Let's say I want to trade the 15 minute. So now the 1 minute has a buy signal. The 5 minute has a buy signal. Now the 15 minute has a buy signal. I know it doesn't actually have one right now, but let's just pretend that it does. So now the 15 minute has a buy signal, right? So this is the time frame that I wanted to trade. So now we can take the trade on the 15 minute, but instead of using the 15 minute to get out of our trade, we're going to keep watching the higher time frames to make sure those buys are still coming in, right? To make sure the waterfall is still in effect, right? So if we got in the 15-minute buy and this thing continues to climb, that should trigger the 30-minute buy. And then so on. It should trigger the 1 hour. It should trigger the 4 hour. It should trigger the daily, right? So let's say It triggers the 30, the 1 hour, the 4 hour, but then it doesn't trigger the daily. Let's say the daily still stays in a sell signal, and then we start to sell off again. And that re-triggers the 4 hour back into a sell signal, right? That's where you want to close your trade. So if you started, let's just recap this very quickly. So we start off looking for reversals on the lower time frame, right? 1 minute gives a buy, 5 minute gives a buy, 15 minute gives a buy. Then we take the 15 and we keep watching the next time frames. 30, 1 hour, 4 hour, they all give buys. But then the daily doesn't give a buy. So then we go back to the last time frame that did give you a buy signal, which is the 4 hour. When that switches back into a sell, that reversal has ended. Okay? So you do this all the way up into the time frame that doesn't flip into the direction that you want it to flip into. So let's say we took the trade on the 15 minute and it got all the way to the 1 hour and it flipped into a buy on the 1 hour, right? But then the 2 hour or the 4 hour never flipped into buys and it started to sell off again. So that's where you would close your trade, is once the 1 hour flipped into a sell again. So whatever the highest time frame that is following your direction, once that flips back to where it was, so if it goes from buy to sell, you close your trade. Okay, that might be a little confusing. Just go back and watch this video a few times and you'll understand what I'm talking about. The best way to understand it is to just look at a trade live. Like, use this trade on Bitcoin. If you saw something like this happening live, just follow that trade all the way through, obviously as long as you can while you're at the computer, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Okay, just keep watching the time frames as they go higher, and then it will get to a time frame that it just cannot beat. Right? It just can't get that daily buy signal. Right? It will find a time frame that it can't beat. But if it doesn't find a time frame that it can't beat, let's say the daily flips into a buy, then you're good to go. You should be massively in profit, right? Because you basically caught the bottom. You found where the daily was flipping into a buy and you bought it at the very bottom. Okay, so that technique can give you some amazing entries for longer time frame trades. Obviously, you're going to get chopped out a lot, but if you catch one of those massive winners, like let's say you catch one of these big moves on the daily of Bitcoin, you would have caught the entire move pretty much. Okay, moving on. Another technique that I like to do is when something gives me a buy signal, I immediately look back and I try to find the most local trend line. Okay, so like if this gave me a buy signal, I want to find the most local trend. So like I would take these two previous highs, right? And you see how it's breaking that downtrend? That is a pretty strong buy signal typically. Now obviously in this case it wasn't, because the higher time frames are just leaking. But typically you will find when the buy signal is breaking the trend. Let me show you some examples. So like Tesla, we had an example of this recently. You see how this buy signal is breaking this trend line and then you go for a small run here? Typically when these break the trend line on the buy signal, they are strong. But then notice if we were to grab this trend here, like if we took this from high to high, when it gave you that buy signal, you would not have broken that trend. And if we go to another example here, let's go to NEO. Same thing here. You see this downtrend and we're giving a buy signal? That is typically going to be a strong buy signal. So if we go down to the 4 hour, same thing here. You see that trend line? And the 4 hour is breaking that trend. So always do that. If you're even in sells too, try to find your local trend. And if it's breaking your local trend, that is typically a very strong signal, or at least stronger than average. Okay. Now, another thing that I like to do is I like to throw in some other indicators as confluence. So the indicators that I like the most, if you guys are in Discord, I like using the Oasis Trading Suite and the Momo. So the problem with using the Oasis Trading Suite is it colors your candles the same way the bot does. It's a different formula, but they both color your candles, right? And on TradingView, there's a bug where if you use multiple indicators that color your candles, they conflict with each other. So it's going to give you a little, it's going to mess up your candle coloring a little bit. So if you can, put the Oasis Trading Suite on another chart. Like, don't have it on a chart with the bot. So like if you had a 4 chart layout here, just put the Oasis Trading Suite on one of them and then take the bot off. And what I like to do is I like to see when the buy signals come in above the OTS trail. So let me turn off these other signals here. And let's just look at the trail here. You see the trail? I like to see when the buy signals come in above the trail or the sell signals come in below the trail. That gives me pretty strong confluence that that signal is going to be a strong signal. Okay. Another thing that I like to do is I like to look at the Momo histogram. If the Momo histogram is above 0, that buy signal is typically going to be stronger. If the sell signal comes in when the histogram is below 0, that is typically going to be a stronger sell signal. Okay? If you don't have access to our premium indicators and you just have access to the bot, something that you could do to give you a little bit more confluence is you could throw on like a moving average here. And let's just say we put it on something very typical, like people like to use the 21. So basically the same thing here that you would do with the OTS trail. You would look for when the sell signals are coming in below the 21 or the buy signals are coming in above the 21. And that would just give you a very small edge on these signals. It would give them a little stronger probability of success, right? And that is pretty much it for my tips and tricks. Just a couple ways for you guys to add in some confluence to get stronger signals. The biggest thing with the bot is looking at multiple time frames. That is the thing that you guys want to be doing the most. When you see a time frame trigger a buy or a sell, just always go at least one time frame higher and one time frame lower. Just get an idea if the higher and lower time frames are following the time frame that you want to be trading, right? The only exception to that is if you are reversal trading, right? So if the daily, let's say the daily on, let's go back to Bitcoin as an example. Like the daily here is in a sell signal, right? So you're not going to be able to find a 15-minute buy that is going to be in the same signal as the daily. But that's okay because you understand that you are reversal trading, right? If you're trying to follow the trend, the higher time frames should be following the same signal. If you are trying to reversal trade, the lower time frames should be in the opposite signal of the higher time frames. Okay? This is also something that you can do for buying pullbacks. So let's say like Bitcoin is trending up, right? So on these little pullbacks where it consolidates, the lower time frames are going to be triggering sell signals, but the daily is going to still be in a buy signal, right? So like right here, when the daily had a buy signal and it was almost kind of a fake out and you started to pull back, the daily stayed in a buy signal. But if we go down to like the 4 hour, you can see how it's triggering sells, right? Or if we go to a 1 hour, and I'll mark this out so it's easier to see. So that's where it starts, and let's just say the pullback ends right there, right? So if we go to a 4 hour, what is it doing during that range? It's triggering sells, right? If we go to a 1 hour, let's see what it's doing in that range. It's triggering a lot of sells. But the daily never triggers a sell. The daily stays in a buy. So that tells you that if you're looking to buy the pullback, you want to ignore these sell signals and then wait for them to turn into buys again. Okay? So if you did that and you took this buy, you would have had a small loss. But then if you took this buy, you would have had a massive win. Right? So if you want to buy pullbacks in the same direction as your higher time frame, just be sure to watch the lower time frames for the reverses. Don't take the sell signals, take them when they flip into buy signals, right? And that's it, guys. That's all I have for tips and tricks. If you guys have any other tips and tricks that you like, be sure to put them in the Trading Bot channel in Discord. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys later. Peace.